turn indicator connectors. Remove the retaining screws of the headlight fairing and pull the fairing forward to extract it. Remove the 4 retaining screws of the top panel and remove panel. Remove the left-hand half fairing, starting with the bottom screws, and then remove the upper screws. Finally, remove the screw securing the half fairing to the frame. Remember to remove the fuel vapor drain hose. Repeat the process with the right-hand half fairing. Remove the front panel to gain access to the horizontal cylinder. Remove the horn mount and detach the horn connector. Disconnect the battery. Disconnect the negative lead first, then the positive lead. Remove the top strap and take the battery out of its mount. Keep the battery spacer and remove the starter contactor mount. Undo the 3 battery mount screws. Disconnect the starter motor cable and remove it from the bike. Valve inspection covers are now exposed. Check and adjust valve clearance if necessary. Removing the outermost parts, Ducati 750 Super Sport and 900 Super Sport. Use the ignition switch key to release the seat. Release the fuel tank strap, lift the tank and place it on the service rod. Disconnect the fuel drain and breather hoses and the fuel pump wiring. Be careful, the fuel in the system is under pressure. Slide the clip off the tank fixing pin and keep the washer. Extract the pin and lift the tank. Tank connections are marked return and delivery. When detaching the fuel hoses, make sure that the straps identifying the delivery N and return R hoses are in place. Cut the wiring strap and detach the turn indicator connectors. Remove the side fairings, starting with the bottom screws, and then remove the upper screws. Finally, remove the 2 screws securing the half fairings to the frame. When removing the left-hand half fairing, take out the side stand. Place bike onto a stand and remove rear shock absorber. Disconnect the battery. Disconnect the negative lead first, then the positive lead. Remove the top bracket and take the battery out of its mount. Remove the fuse box holder. Remove the filter cartridge. Undo the 4 filter box screws and remove the engine control unit holder. Cut the clips and detach connector from main wiring. Detach horn and voltage regulator connectors. Disconnect the oil breather hose and the fuel vapor drain hoses. Undo the screws securing filter box to frame. Loosen the clips on the intake manifolds and slide out the filter box. Disconnect the oil cooler. Release the horizontal cylinder spark plug cap and lower the cooler. Detach the connection of the engine temperature sensor. Valve inspection covers are now exposed. Check and adjust valve clearances if necessary. Removing the outermost parts, Ducati MH900E. Undo the 2 retaining nuts and remove the seat padding. Remove the 6 screws on the fuel tank guard. To detach turn indicator connectors, slide headlight fairing partially out of its housing. Remove headlight fairing. Undo fuel tank plug and remove tank guard. Remove seat and move it aside. Detach the stoplight connector and remove it. Undo rubber bushings and keep the seat support plate. Release the fuel circuit quick couplings and slightly lift the tank. Disconnect the fuel pump wiring and remove tank. Store the tank away, taking care to avoid spills. Remove steering damper. Remove filter box cover and filter cartridge. Remove battery brackets and protection covers. Disconnect the battery negative lead first, then the positive lead. Take the batteries out of their mounts. Remove the voltage regulator mount. Undo the screws on the valve inspection cover and remove the battery mounts. Before removing the right-hand side battery mount from the bike, slide out the starter contactor rubber clip and the fuse bracket. Undo the screw fixing filter box to frame. Loosen the intake manifold and throttle body clips. Undo the filter box clip and disconnect the oil breather hose. Slightly lift the filter box to remove it. Disconnect the fuel vapor drain hose. To make removal easier, slide out vertical cylinder intake funnel and then remove the complete filter box. Remove the oil cooler and detach the engine temperature sensor connector. Remove the horizontal cylinder exhaust pipe locking ring nut and extract the split bushes. Use a standard spring puller to relieve the exhaust pipe locking springs. Remove pipe. Keep the oil seal. Valve inspection covers are now exposed. Check and adjust valve clearances if necessary. Checking valve clearances. 2-valve engine. Unscrew the retaining screws of the valve inspection covers and take off all 4 covers. Keep the seals. remove the spark plugs. Remove the timing belt covers. Remove the generator side inspection cover and install tool part number 88-713-0123 to rotate the engine. Rotate the engine until the mark on the timing lay belt roller is aligned with the notch on the casing. Zero set degree wheel. The horizontal cylinder is at top dead center in the combustion stroke. You can now check valve clearances. To check opening clearance, slide a feeler gauge between opening rocker arm and shim. Clearances must be between captioned values. To check closing clearance, use a screwdriver to push against the closing rocker arm to counteract the pressure of the return spring. Using a feeler gauge, check clearance between closing rocker arm and closing shim. If the shim can rotate without any effort, closing clearance corresponds to the feeler gauge thickness. If the shim cannot turn in any way, the valve may be jammed. Clearances must be between captioned values. When finished on the horizontal cylinder, you can check clearances on the vertical cylinder. Rotate crankshaft counterclockwise by 270 degrees, so that cylinder is at top dead center in the combustion stroke. Valve clearance adjustment. 2-valve engine. Loosen and remove mobile tensioners on both cylinders. Remove timing belts. If belts do not need replacing, mark the cylinder they belong to and the direction of rotation. Check that all valves are closed. Camshafts must be in their rest position and thus free to rotate. Remove the clip on the rocker arm to adjust opening clearance. Rotate camshaft and at the same time set aside rocker arm to release opening shim. Remove shim and measure it with tool part number 88-765-0978. Zero set a common digital gauge on tool and fit the shim. Gauge reading gives the distance between valve and rocker arm contact surfaces. Remove closing shim to adjust closing clearance. Before removing the valve closing shims, fit one of the valve inspection cover screws into the oil drain hole to block it off. This will prevent the half rings falling into the engine. Rotate camshaft to access valve and lower it by hand. Fit a screwdriver to hold the rocker arm in position. Push down the shim and extract the half rings using pincers. Remove the closing shim from the valve shaft. The half rings hold the valve in place. Be sure the piston is at top dead center when removing the half rings, or the valve will fall into the cylinder. Zero set the gauge and measure the closing shim using the tool specified above. Gauge reading gives the distance between rocker arm and half ring contact surfaces. Based on gauge readings and measured valve clearances, select shim size to obtain valve clearances between captioned values. Proceed with installation. When installing the closing shims, rotate the shims to make sure the half rings are securely in place. Refitting timing belts, 2-valve engines. Fit the locking tool, part number 88-713-2011, on the crankshaft and align the mark on the timing lay belt roller with the reference notch on the crankcase. Screw tool shaft on crankcase so that horizontal cylinder piston is at top dead center in the combustion stroke. Use belt roller tightening tool part number 88-713-2107 to loosen the screws on the belt rollers. Move camshafts with tool part number 88-713-0144 and install the retainers for engine timing on the two cylinders part number 88-713-2009. Take up the vertical cylinder belt roller play by turning it counterclockwise. Refit timing belt. Install screw into the cylinder hole and then fit mobile tensioner. Repeat procedure with the horizontal cylinder. The belt tensioning procedure coming next is carried out by selecting this special function on the Mattes's tester. Fit probe on the vertical cylinder belt and adjust tension with tool part number 88-713-12-15. belt with your finger. Belt vibration will give the tension value. The Matis's tester reads the frequency of vibration and, on the basis of the caption table, timing belt can be correctly tensioned. Once desired tension value is reached, tighten belt roller timing screws to the nominal torque. After having completed the procedure on the vertical cylinder, move probe and repeat the whole operation with the horizontal cylinder. Take care to comply with the data shown in the caption table. Remove the Matis's tester probe, the timing tools and the crankshaft locking tool. Refit engine components you have removed and then refit also the bike outermost parts.